Okay, so where we stopped last time, we had just read the advice to the king about if you enjoy your wealth now, that's good. If you use it to create virtue, that's even better. But if you do neither, then you've kind of wasted it. Okay, so not hoarding things. So now there's more about that. He talks to the king more about this. So he says, when dying, since you will lose your independence, you will be unable to give away your possessions through ministers who shamelessly cease to value and seek the affection of the new king. Therefore, while healthy, quickly use all your resources to build the Dharma sites, for you stand in the midst of death's causes like a lamp in the midst of a storm. So this is 3:16 and 3:17. Okay, so when you're dying, when you're actively dying, you can't give away your stuff because you're in no shape to start, giving stuff away when your body is so weak and your mind is uncontrolled and so on. So don't wait until the last moment to create the merit through generosity. And you can't give your possessions away by asking your ministers, or in our case, our relatives, to give away things for us, because they're all going to be wanting them for themselves. Yeah, so the ministers, cease to value the present king when he's dying, and they're looking for the affection of the new king. And so in the same way, when we die, our family may care about us, but, their eyes are going to be on the possessions. And if we say, give this away or give that away, chances are they'll be distracted and not do it. Yeah. I helped a young man in Singapore when he was dying, over a period of time. He was quite ill. He was dying of cancer. He was in his late 20s, early 30s. And he, told his sister exactly what he wanted done with everything. And he started giving stuff away before he actually died. And that was very good, because he created so much merit. And then also on a practical level, he didn't leave it all for his sister to take care of. But I remember when he was actually dying, the day he died, he reminded her again, please give this offering to so-and-so and this offering to so-and-so. So his last thought was to give, and he knew his sister would carry it out for him. Yeah. That was an interesting death to be at. He had wanted to die at home. We had it all arranged, and I would go visit him almost every day. So this one day I went to visit him, and there was nobody at the apartment, at the flat. And so, it's like, oh, he must have gone to the hospital. And sure enough, when he really felt himself slipping away, he got scared and he said, take me to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. Now, the situation in Singapore is very interesting with respect to Christians, because they are on an all-out mission to convert people to Christianity. And so, he had people coming over trying to convert him. I remember one time coming to visit him, and there were some missionaries there, and he wasn't interested in it, but he didn't want to be rude to the people. He should have actually just said thank you, but no thank you. But he didn't do that. So I remember these missionaries, we were both talking. We were talking to each other, and one of the missionaries said something to the effect of, it's really too bad that you're a heathen. Oh, okay, thank you. And he was having problems with this doctor, too, who was trying to convert him, which is none of the doctor's business, okay? But when I finally figured out which hospital he had gone to, and I walked in, the doctor was standing by his bedside, and my hing was saying, "Don't confuse me, don't confuse me." And I knew exactly what was happening. The doctor was trying to convert him on his deathbed. And I went up there and I said to the doctor, "Please leave. He obviously doesn't want you here. He is a Buddhist. Don't confuse him at the time he's dying." So the doctor went away, and I did what I could to calm my hing. Then afterwards, and he died, yeah. Then afterwards, I thought, who knows what in the world this doctor is doing that is causing so much disturbance to other people, in addition to my friend. And I had heard of other kinds of things like this happening. So I wrote a letter to the main newspaper in Singapore. And I said, "This is my experience with the doctor. Is this acceptable behavior on the part of medical professionals?" Yeah, I just asked it as a question. So there was this big discussion. And finally, the Ministry of Health came and said, "No, this is not permissible." And it was published in the newspaper. And so I felt, okay, that's good. Maybe some other people will be careful now. Yeah. So, it's not good to try and convert somebody on their deathbed. Okay, it's not good to try and convert people on airplane flights either. I have some karma sitting next to people on airplane flights, not this flight, but other times. Oh my goodness, the number of times. I'm a nun, it's kind of obvious, yeah, and they still try and convert me. Unbelievable. So one time I just said to the man, because he said, "I'm doing this with compassion so you won't go to hell." And I said, you tell me that your God is compassionate. I'm living an ethical life. I practice kindness and generosity and forgiveness as much as I can. If your God is actually as you describe him, why in the world would he send somebody like me to hell? And then I said, I'm trying to respect your belief, and I would really appreciate if you respected mine. And so that ended the conversation. And then, we were silent. And then right as the plane was landing, he said something to the effect of, "Well, maybe I spoke to you a little bit too strongly," or something like that. But, I felt like I needed to politely tell him that, I needed respect for what I was. And, I didn't need him to tell me I was going to hell. Thank you very much. Yeah. And it's interesting because he said he was doing it out of compassion for me. But he was, pushing his beliefs on somebody who clearly didn't want them. I don't call that compassion. So as Buddhists, we don't push our ideas on other people. We make them available. We aren't shy. we make things available, but we let other people choose, and we respect whatever faith they do choose, because it's helping them. It's clearly making some sense to them, so encourage them in that way. I could go on with my death stories. I'll spare you that one. Okay, so then he says to the king, while healthy, quickly use all your resources to build dharma sites. So while your senses and everything are still intact, and you have access to your funds, then build temples and monasteries and institutions and centers and whatever, because actually, as beings in samsara, we're like a lamp in the middle of a storm. A lamp in the middle of a storm does not have a good chance of staying lit very long. And, we're in the midst of death's causes. And we don't know when we're going to die. So make use of what we have now rather than make use of it to create merit that will go on with us to a future life, instead of hoarding things now and being very miserly. When I lived in Dharamsala, there was one lady who sometimes made lunch for us, a Tibetan lady, who had come over the Himalayas when she was young to escape. And I heard that when her father died, apparently when they were coming over the Himalayas, he had carried some gold, the family wealth, and he had buried it somewhere. And on his deathbed, he was trying to tell her where he had buried the gold. And I thought, oh my goodness. Yeah, can you imagine dying and what's on your mind? Yeah, gold that's not going to serve you, and you're trying to describe where it is to your daughter. Yeah, I wouldn't want to die with that kind of thought going on in my mind. Okay. You should also, 318, you should also preserve in the manner in which they have been established any other dharma centers, temples, and such initiated by previous kings. Okay, so don't just support your own monasteries, support those that were established by previous people too. Okay. And then 319, they should be attended. So when you make centers and so on, they should be attended by those who practice nonviolence, who are virtuous in conduct and keep their precepts, who are kind to guests, truthful and tolerant, who are not quarrelsome and always energetic. Okay, so here he's describing who should be the person in charge of operating or being the manager of or director of the center, the monastery, the library, whatever it is. Okay, so here, who's your director? Vice director? Yeah? Okay. So here's for you to live up to. Okay? And then anybody who may follow him and anybody on the committee that's helping him should also have these kinds of qualities, okay? So practice nonviolence. Yeah, makes sense. First thing for a Buddhist to do. Yeah, especially if you're in charge of an organization. If you're a person who's violent, that is not going to be good for keeping the organization together. Okay. Virtuous in conduct and keep their precepts. So when you're in a position where you're managing things, directing things, you have to be a good example for everybody else, especially keeping precepts. And, when you look, we've had so many different scandals in Dharma centers through the years, and they all could have been prevented if people had simply kept their precepts. Yeah? But people think, well, somehow the precepts, they don't pertain to me, or people won't know, it's just a little bit something, but that's really kind of arrogant on our part, isn't it? Thinking that the precepts apply to other people, but somehow we're more spiritually elevated and they don't apply to us. Yeah. And so you find in the West, people coming to Dharma centers, yeah, I don't want to hear about the 5 precepts, It sounds like my mother. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't sleep around with people, and don't drink and drug. I am beyond that. I've heard that all the time from my parents. Don't give me that stuff. I want highest class Tantra initiation. I want to learn Mahamudra and Dzogchen because I am very spiritually advanced. Yeah? This is us Westerners meeting the Dharma. Isn't it? Yeah. Don't tell me to stop lying and stop sleeping around. That's stuff for babies. I am spiritually advanced. Yeah? Before I came here, I was talking in Boston with Janet Gatso. She's a Buddhist professor. And she was commenting, because you know about the Me Too movement in the U.S., women really standing up and saying, come on. And she was commenting, that you would think that people see all these other people getting called out for sexual abuse and sexual harassment, and yet people keep doing it, somehow thinking that they're not going to get caught or it doesn't apply to them. Yeah, and we were marveling at that. But, again, this is our samsaric stupidity that, we give ourselves permission to do things that we wouldn't give anybody else permission to do. And somehow we think that we're not going to get caught. Yeah? And so, our Congress is emptying out. There's quite a bit of, politicians, people in Hollywood, people in business, who are resigning from their jobs because they're getting called out on sexual harassment. Okay, so another quality, who are kind to guests. Yeah, this is important, especially, in a center, many new people come. They aren't familiar with what prayers you do, what the formalities are. They don't know anybody. And so it's really important to greet them and be friendly and show them where in the prayer book it is and, express interest in them. Sometimes people tell me that they go to Buddhist centers and everybody just goes there to meditate and listen to teachings, and then they go home. Or they go to the pub. And, and that's not, we should be friendly to guests, but we don't need to go to the pub to be friendly to them. Okay? But it's very important to welcome new people. Then being truthful and tolerant, non-judgmental, and then managers who are not quarrelsome and who are always energetic. Yeah, because if the director or manager is quarrelsome, then everybody's going to fight. Yeah, and so many Dharma centers are like that. I haven't sensed that being here. I've sensed that you're quite harmonious. But other places I've been, kind of people come up to me, you know, and they want to talk to me because, you know, people are quarreling in the Dharma Center and there's a big power struggle and, you know, just regular samsara. But it shouldn't be in Dharma centers, yeah. We should be trying to practice what our teachers are teaching us. Okay. Then, so it's important to appoint appropriate people. So the same, you know, if you're in a business situation, then you should appoint appropriate people to delegate power to, and to delegate responsibility to, and really look at their qualities. And, you know, I think these same kind of qualities are important in a business, in a family, everywhere. Yeah, don't you? Yeah, I mean, what can you refute about people who practice nonviolence? What, you want to be around people who are violent? People who are virtuous in conduct and keep their precepts. You want to be around people who don't keep precepts? Yeah, who are kind to guests, truthful and tolerant. You want to be around people who are the opposite of that? Yeah, who are not quarrelsome and are always energetic. Again, do we want to make our best friends people who have the opposite of those qualities? Yeah. I did a discussion group one time with, when I lived in Singapore, I would go to the colleges and universities, and they had Buddhist groups. And so I did a discussion one time with them and asked them, you know, what are the qualities, they're teenagers, okay? What are the qualities that you look for in people who could possibly be your friends? And I just had them, you know, talk and describe those qualities. And what the qualities boiled down to was basically the 5 precepts and these kinds of things listed here in the verse. Yeah, that those are the qualities you look for to become friends with somebody. Okay, then 320 and 321. The blind, sick, and downtrodden, the homeless, impoverished, and disabled should all without trouble equally obtain food and drink. Support in an appropriate manner those Dharma practitioners who do not seek aid, and even support those who are living in the kingdom of others. Okay? So he's speaking here in the context of a Dharma organization or temple, monastery. Okay, so the blind, sick, downtrodden, homeless, impoverished, and disabled, if they come to your Dharma site, they should equally obtain food and drink and be treated with the same respect as we would treat a benefactor who gives a lot of money. Yeah. So we should treat everybody well, whether they're wealthy benefactors or not. And and not just play favorites according to who helps us. Yeah. So I don't know if your center does this. Some centers do. So I risk stepping on some toes. But I'll just express my own personal opinion. You know, I see in some places I go that some people are, guests are treated very well, you know, and according to how much money they donate, then they get to have dinner with the Lama, or they get to drive the Lama, or they get a signed photograph with the Lama, or they, get some statue or some special thing. And so there's levels of donors. Yeah, and you get a special reward according to how much you give. personally speaking, I can't imagine if the Buddha were alive that he would do that. Yeah? I can't imagine that. And I certainly know His Holiness Dalai Lama doesn't do that. Yeah? So at the Abbey, we don't have classes of donors. Yeah? And people give all sorts of amounts, and what is important to us is that they have a generous mental state, a generous mind when they give. Okay. Yeah, and then support in an appropriate manner Dharma practitioners who don't ask you for anything. So still, because they're practitioners, because they're monastics, then support them. And even support those monastics and practitioners who live in other kingdoms. Yeah, so support internationally as well. Okay, because we're all one big Dharma family, aren't we? Yeah, and it makes me sad sometimes when I see sectarianism spreading in the West between different Dharma groups, and people, they just go to their own center. They won't. There may be a wonderful teacher going somewhere else, but they won't go there. They just have their own place. So, of course, people may not be interested in receiving teachings widely. That's fine. It's an individual decision. But what I'm commenting on is this idea that, our tradition is the best one. Our tradition is the purest one. These other Dharma centers. Yeah, so, we should have respect, for other people practicing in other Buddhist traditions, and respect for people practicing in other religions altogether. Yeah, and His Holiness is really a wonderful model of that. If you look on his website, they report the news of what he's up to, and he's always, engaging with people from different religions, different classes of life. You see him in so many different dresses, yeah? He'll have a Hindu, whatever you call it here, the red one. He puts on a yarmulke when he went to Israel. He, puts on Islamic dress. And the thing that my nephew really liked was, what was the guy's name? Aaron Rodgers, some famous football star, went to visit His Holiness last week and gave him a cap. He was from the winning football team. Gave him a cap and a football. And His Holiness is standing there with a baseball cap holding this football. My nephew loved it. Okay. But, this is how His Holiness is. He just engages with everybody. Yeah. Okay. Then 322, for every Dharma site, appoint Dharma teachers who are energetic, free of greed, knowledgeable, pious, and who will not hinder those practicing there. So this is really important, okay? So when you have teachers coming, or people leading study groups, yeah, then they should be energetic. So it's not like, oh God, I gotta go teach tonight. These people, not people like that, okay? So people who are energetic, free of greed. So if they're teaching or they're leading, they're not doing so to get offerings. Yeah, they're not deciding where to go to teach, who to teach, according to how much offerings they receive. People who are knowledgeable, so not just people who speak well or who are popular, but people who actually know the Dharma. people who are pious, who have faith in what they're teaching. They're not just, scholars of some sort who don't really believe, and who won't hinder those practicing there. And you might wonder, what does that mean? Yeah, why would somebody who's appointed as a teacher or a guide hinder those practicing there? Because they might be jealous that maybe somebody will understand more Dharma than they do, or learn more Dharma than they have learned, and would usurp their position. Yeah? So you don't want people leading who have that kind of jealousy. Okay. So now, appointing wise and kind religious leaders. Okay. So appoint, that's what he was talking about, just above there, people with those qualities. Now he's going to go into appointing ministers. Okay, so your Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, your representative to the UN, these people. So appoint as ministers policy experts who are pious, polite, and pure, devoted, courageous, of good family, ethically outstanding, and grateful. Okay? So appoint as people in your government, or if you're running a business or any kind of thing, people who are policy experts, who know what they're doing. Don't appoint your daughter and son-in-law who have no experience. Okay? Yeah, don't appoint billionaires who don't know anything about the department that they're supposed to run. Appoint people who are policy experts. And those people should be pious, yeah? And they should be polite, and they should have a pure motivation, okay? And devoted, they should be loyal to you, but not the kind of loyalty where you demand a loyalty pledge from someone else, okay? Courageous in the sense of this is somebody who will do what is right and suitable, even if other people may not approve of it. Somebody of good family. That when we say of good family here, it means somebody who, it doesn't mean that you have to come from a high social class, that kind of family. It means somebody who has been raised well, who treats people respectfully, who is, what's the word? Yeah, a respectful, I can't think of the word. Anybody think, But, the kind of person you would want to represent you. Somebody who has some finesse, who's not going to go around insulting people and putting people down and so on. Yeah, because if they're representing your kingdom or your business or whatever, they should represent well and not send tweets at 3 a.m. insulting people. Okay, somebody ethically outstanding and grateful. Yeah, so to have ministers with those kind of qualities. And so these, again, are the kind of qualities we would want even in friends, isn't it? Yeah, and then we have to think, okay, if I'm going to be a good friend to somebody, or if I'm going to be a good employee, or if I'm going to be a good employer or a good leader, I should practice developing these same qualities. Yeah, so it kind of gives us a roadmap for the things to develop in ourselves. Yeah, we had one young man, he was, I think, 24. He came and did a retreat with us recently. And as most people in their young 20s, confused, Yeah, it's it's the age of confusion, late teens, early 20s. And, he liked Dharma, but he also liked drugs. And, trying to put the two together and, so on. So I talked to him at the end of the retreat, and I said, you have to think about what kind of human being you want to be. Yeah, don't just think about having fun and having a good time and like that, but what kind of human being do you want to be? And then try and develop those qualities that you respect and become that kind of person. Yeah. So I think he heard it. But that applies for us old fogies too. Yeah, we need to do the same inner work. Okay, now about appointing generals. So for all of you who are going to appoint generals, yeah, but it could be somebody in state government who has to appoint a warden for a prison, yeah, or something, Police often have some, like a military structure. Yeah. And in the US, you have the same kind of titles for police as you do in the military, captain, lieutenant. Yeah. Do you do that here? Yeah. So, could be similar. Appoint military advisors who are generous. So I guess they give their weapons to the enemy. Yeah. I don't think it really means that. Unattached, yeah, heroic and polite. Yeah, a military general who's polite, who properly uses resources and doesn't waste them, are steadfast, always vigilant, and pious. Yeah. So this is important. There was somebody did a series of 10 videos on Vietnam and the war in Vietnam. And it was very, very moving because I grew up during that period and had very strong impact on my life. But one of the episodes was talking about the massacre at My Lai. Yeah. And how, what poor leadership there was that was telling, the underlings basically to kill anybody they came across. And then the corrupt system that, only one guy, I think, got found guilty, and then he was imprisoned for a short time, and then he was pardoned. But, a military should not have that kind of leadership. I don't think we should have militaries at all, but that's another point. But, if you're going to have one, it should be people who are competent and reliable and who respect human life. Yeah? I say that as, the US, Britain, and France sent missiles to Syria last night. Yeah. Okay, then 325. So here's appointing treasurers and other officials. Appoint as officials, elders that behave in accord with the Dharma and are pure, who are skillful and know what to do, who are erudite, organized, impartial, and polite. Okay? So for treasurers, for other kinds of officials, people that behave in accord with the Dharma, who aren't going around cheating you or cheating the people they're dealing with. Yeah, so if you're running a company, you certainly want your employees to be truthful to you and honest with you, and also respectful and kind to your clients and your customers and to other employees. Okay, so people who are skillful, they know what to do, they're erudite, organized. Yeah? How many people are in admin positions who are totally disorganized? Okay, so this is an important quality also to develop, to learn how to be organized and tidy. Okay? Now, it sounds weird, and you may say, like, come on, this is all stuff my mother told me. But let me tell you, okay, some people don't get it. They may hear it, but they don't get it. At the Abbey, we have young people there who do not know how to make their bed. I'm not joking. They've never made their bed in their whole life. And we have to teach them how to make their bed. We have young people coming who don't know how to sweep a floor. Really? And we have to teach them how to sweep a floor, how to run a vacuum cleaner, how to wash dishes. Yeah? Yeah? So these are things that it's important to teach children, because otherwise they grow up, they don't know these basic skills. And then they get married, they have roommates, or they come to Shravasti Abbey, and they don't know what to do. They're completely unorganized. Yeah? So I think this is something as parents that is really important, to teach your kids how to be organized and responsible. I tease my nephew. He's a great kid. I really love him. But he, and he's really into sports. But I always tease him because he can't get his dirty clothes in the clothes hamper. He can throw a football far. He can do baskets. But he can't quite make the dirty clothes into the clothes hamper. Okay? And they wind up on the floor instead. So these are important life skills that kids need to learn. Okay? Also, how to keep a desk clean. Okay, now we're all going to go like this, aren't we? Yeah. Most of us, our desks look like a cyclone just came through. Okay? So my philosophy with that is, in the morning I work and everything is laid out and it's all over the place. But every evening I put everything away so that the desk is clear. I don't leave things out all over. Yeah. And so that actually helps me the next day when I come, because I can see the desk, instead of seeing books and papers and everything and computers on top of it. Okay. Okay. Then here's more instructions for the king. Each month, listen to their reports. So all your officials should report to you. Listen to their reports of all income and expenses. Having listened, tell them all that should be done for the Dharma sites and so on. So keep tabs of the people who are working for you. Give them independence to do what they need to do, but supervise and make sure you know what the people are doing, especially regarding income and expenses. Okay? Because ultimately, the person at the top is the one who's responsible if resources aren't getting used properly. Yeah? So keep track, and then tell them what needs to be done in the next period. Yeah? So in our situation, it could be, if you're working in your business has teams or departments or whatever, have meetings, have everybody report what they're doing, everybody plan together what they're going to do, yeah, so that things are run efficiently. Okay, if you rule for the sake of Dharma, this is 327. If you rule for the sake of Dharma and not for fame or out of desire, then it will have a most meaningful result. Otherwise, your rule will be disastrous. So he's being really frank with the king now. You've got to have a good motivation. Because if you're just seeking fame and offerings and wealth, you're not going to have a good result, and your whole reign in the kingdom is going to be a mess. So similarly for us, whatever job we're doing or volunteer work we're doing, to have a proper motivation, not for fame, not for wealth, not for power, but really trying to benefit. Otherwise, we create messes, don't we? Okay, so now there's another heading, govern without compromising Dharma principles. So this is actually a topic that comes up all the time. How can we live a working life, a worldly life, without compromising our Dharma principles? So I go to Singapore almost every year. I used to live there, and I have quite a close connection, karmic connection with the people. And there's one man who offers lunch dana every time I go. And every time he asks me, because he's a businessman, so he says, how can I do business without lying? Yeah? Because if I'm going to close deals, I have to fudge this and that, otherwise I can't close the deals. Yeah. So he tells me, and every time I give him the same answer. And because I had a friend some time ago, I used to live in Hong Kong also, and I had a friend who was an executive at Levi Strauss in Hong Kong. And I asked her this question, because she was an executive. And she said, if you are truthful and honest, you do better in business. Because if you lie and cheat the customers or your clients, eventually they will find out that you did that. They will not come back and do business with you in the future. And they will not only not recommend you to their friends, but they will speak very poorly of your business to the other people they talk about. So she said, if you really want to do well in your business, you should be truthful and honest. At the beginning, you may not make as much money, but in the long term, your business will be much more successful. Yeah. So this is what I tell that Singaporean businessman every year. Okay, so Nagarjuna says, King, hear how in this world, where the one usually destroys the other, so the Dharma and your worldly duties, one usually destroys the other. You can have both the Dharma and a kingdom. Okay? So then he goes into ways that you can do this. Yeah. So may you always be accompanied, 329, may you always be accompanied by many advisors who are mature in knowledge of good family, well-versed in public policy, afraid of misdeeds, not contentious, and able to see what should be done. Okay? So how do you want to hold to your Dharma principles and also do your worldly work? Gather people with excellent qualities around you to be your advisors and the people that you delegate responsibility to. Yeah. So again, don't just don't play nepotism and just give it to, some relative's kid because they're your relative, or get yourself in a situation where you have to hire somebody as a favor to somebody else so that they'll do something for you. But, make sure you surround yourself by good advisors and delegate responsibility to them. Yeah. So it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But in real situations, it's very tricky. It's very tricky, especially if your good friend comes and says, well, my son or daughter just graduated from university, they need a job, maybe can you help them out and give them a job? And you've known the kid for a long time because they're your friend's child, and you're working in manufacturing and they've studied, history. And, and it's not going to be a good match. Or the kid and, they're just not the kind of person. But your friend's asking you for a favor. Yeah, so what do? Yeah, do you go along with this and bring that person in even though they're not qualified? Or do you say to your friend, gee, I would like to help out, but I need people with these kind of criteria, and your child hasn't studied that field, or, this is not something, a better way to say it is it's not a good match, and I don't think they would be happy working for me. That's a better way to say it. Yeah. Okay. Even if they rightly fine, so now we're going into the other section about prison, and how to deal with wrongdoers. So even if they rightly fine, imprison, or corporally punish wrongdoers, you, being always moistened by compassion, should show kindness. So as the king, even though you appoint people in the law enforcement thing who may fine people or imprison them or apparently beat them, which is not allowed nowadays, but officers in prison do that anyway. But the police sure do it. Are your police like our police? Good. I mean, it's just outrageous what's going on with the police in the U.S. now. So even if there's people in your court system or law enforcement system that must enforce the law and do things that are unpleasant for people who are wrongdoers, as the king, you should always be compassionate. Yeah. So the leader should be the compassionate one, even though sometimes the people underneath need to be rather strict and enforce policies. Okay? In the monastery, we call it the good cop and the bad cop. I don't know why we call it cops in monasteries. But, in the monastery, you usually have different leaders, and the person who is abbot or abbess should be the one who is most compassionate, and then the one who's the assistant should be the one that has to talk to people straight. Okay? Because it works much better like that. If you have the Dharma teacher, or the abbot or abbess being the one who is strict, then it really interferes with people's spiritual practices. But sometimes the teacher's in that position anyway, and you have to be that way. I'm sure Rinpoche did that, huh? Yeah. Was he frank and straightforward with you? Yeah, I can't imagine him pulling punches. So, okay. 331. King, out of compassion, you should always make your mind focused upon benefiting all beings, even those that have committed the most serious misdeeds. Yeah? So even though some of your subjects do horrible things, you should always, as the head, cultivate compassion and think of how to benefit those people. Don't think, as a leader, how to retaliate, how to inflict pain and punishment. Yeah. And last night we were talking a bit about this, the punishment model and so on. So sometimes people may need to be treated really rather strongly to get a point across, but you do it with compassion. So the prison system, some people may have to be imprisoned because their behavior is out of control, and they're a danger to other people. And by letting them just roam free, they create a lot of negative karma, which also harms them and will send them to lower rebirths. So out of compassion, not only for would-be victims, but also for the person who doesn't know how to control their behavior, you need to limit their interactions with others and imprison them. But you do it out of compassion, not out of hatred and with the mind that wants to punish them. Okay? That makes some sense? It's often the opposite of what society thinks, but this is really the way to do it. Okay, 332. You should particularly have compassion for those that have committed the serious negativity of murder. Those who have ruined themselves are indeed worthy of great person's compassion. So again, we did this last night and talked about compassion for people who do outrageous things. Why have compassion for them? Because they're clearly confused. They're trying to be happy and abandon, and they don't want to suffer, but they don't know the way to create the causes of happiness, and so they're creating the causes of suffering. Yeah, and so to have compassion for them. And we're not much different. Yeah, we want to be happy. We want to avoid suffering. And even though we know about karma, the law of karma and effects, we don't always adhere to it. The attachment to happiness of only this life is so strong. And, we often do lots of negative things, thinking that it doesn't matter or whatever. So people who are imprisoned, they aren't that different from us. We shouldn't think, they were born criminals or whatever. Sometimes it's just a thing of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah. Sometimes it's being born as a minority and facing discrimination, yeah, in a society that should not discriminate. So to have compassion for everybody on an equal level and think of benefiting all of them. Either every day or every 5 days, release the weakest prisoners and see that it is not the case that the remaining ones are never released as is appropriate. From thinking that some should never be released, you develop behaviors and attitudes that contradict your precepts. From contradicting your precepts, you continually accumulate more negativity. Okay? So again, release prisoners, especially the ones who are ill, the ones who you can see have really rehabilitated themselves. Give them a second chance, okay? Because if you just think, oh, somebody's totally incorrigible, they're beyond hope, then the tendency is to really treat that person poorly, and by doing so, oneself will accumulate a lot of negativity. Okay, and then now the next verses are about how to treat them while they're imprisoned. Until they are released, those prisoners should be made content by providing them with barbers and dentists. Yeah, we did this first last night. Baths, food, drink, clothing, and medical care. And if you have the intention of making unruly children behave properly, you should discipline, as if you have the intention of making unruly children behave properly, you should discipline them out of compassion, not out of anger or the desire for material gain. Okay, so you have to discipline people who need it, but with compassion. And not with just rationalizing compassion. We always hear stories of people who say, it hurts me so much to beat you, but the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. So it pains me so much to beat you, but you need it. Whang, 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 whang. On and on until the kid's really howling. That is, that's fake compassion when we say that. I'm doing it for your own good, but you really do it because you're angry. So let's not do that. But, have clean places, because, a lot of these people, they've never lived in clean homes. Yeah, so have a clean prison. Yeah, have a yard where they can go outside and exercise. Have classes that interest them and give them a good education so that they're not just sitting there watching television and picking fights with each other. Yeah. I read one book by a woman who was a college professor, and she went into a prison and taught Shakespeare to a group of inmates, and they loved it because she taught it in a very psychological way and trying to get them to get into the minds of the different characters. And by doing that, very often they could see themselves in the characters. They would discuss these kinds of things. It was a very successful program. Yeah. So having properly examined and identified particularly hateful murderers, you should send them into exile without killing or harming them. So even if there's people who you try to rehabilitate and teach, but they're not getting it for whatever reason, sometimes the people have quite severe mental problems actually, and they're not getting treated. Then instead of killing them or harming them, he's saying send them into exile. Now, in ancient India, there was lots of space, yeah, and you could easily send them to another kingdom. The idea being not that we're throwing them out and here you take this guy, but the idea being that nobody likes to be socially ostracized, but if you make it known to this person that his behavior is not acceptable in this place, then maybe if he goes somewhere else, he'll think again about his behavior and will behave in a different way and start afresh. Yeah. Nowadays, I can't see that happening much. usually if they do, first of all, they don't release people, even people who should be released. And when they do release people, they usually make them stay in the same state, in which they were imprisoned. Kind of like it's a punishment to stay here. But sometimes that's not such a good idea, because then the guys go back to their old neighborhoods, they're with their old friends, and your choice of friends is one of the chief factors about whether you return to prison or not. So sometimes it would be actually much better to send them somewhere where they can start afresh. Okay. So now this is an interesting verse. It's about sending out agents. Okay, 338. Independently survey all lands through the eyes of agents, always vigilant and mindful, do what should be done in accord with the Dharma. So he's telling the king, to send out people, to the, you're in the capital, send agents out throughout the country to check about how people are doing, and especially to check up on your monasteries and Dharma sites. Do people need resources? Check up, is there an illness, a plague in the place? Is there quarreling? So learn about all the different places in your kingdom so that you can, help those people in the different places. So that's one way to read this verse. I read another translation where it said, instead of send out agents, send out spies. So that people would check on what's going on in all the areas of your kingdom to see, because you could say it as, just check how people are doing and what's going on and if they're happy. But you could put it out like that, but actually you're sending out spies. So it depends, I think, a lot on your motivation and a lot on what you're telling those agents to do. Are they spying or are they feeding you information so that you can help your citizens? Okay, so that's going to depend a lot on the motivation of the ruler. Do you think our rulers do that? Send out spies into our community? When I went to Singapore to teach the first time, this was in 1987, it was right after the first set of riots in Lhasa. I had just been in Lhasa and come back, and then there were riots at the Jokong, and I was just coming to teach Tibetan Buddhism in Singapore, and the people there said, don't talk about the riots. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about China occupying Tibet, because for sure the Singaporean government has sent people into the religious communities to spy. That's what the people in the temples told me. And I said, that's good. I welcome them to come. The spies need to learn the Dharma too. But they were so afraid. And I just read that Singapore wants to, they want to try out face recognition on all their lampposts. And they say it's, to stop terrorism and prevent, people from misbehaving, and to gather information about traffic flow and foot flow so that they can, build the infrastructure better, make better sidewalks or whatever. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think that's the real reason. Yeah, maybe some of you are a spy from the Singapore government. Yeah. But it's amazing there. Many of the people, they just completely trust the government. Yeah. But it's an interesting place because it's kind of like a benevolent dictatorship. It's ostensibly, they have elections and everything, but the same party always wins, and you have just a couple of opposition parties in parliament. But, the government, especially Lee Kuan Yew, he was the first one, he really worked for the benefit of the people because the place was very small, and he got it so that there was, people were middle class, and he did a lot for the country. They gave up many of their civil rights for this, but they were willing to do that. Anyway, little social studies lesson. Okay. We better stop. We're out of time, but we can have a little bit of Q&A. Okay. So we'll stop with sending out the agents, and then we'll meet again tomorrow and see what the agents have to say.
See who's not here tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
They are the agents.
They've been snatched, huh? Okay, so questions or comments? Yeah, here. Who has?
I'm not from pure heart, but I appreciate the text.
Uh-huh.
But I also in conflict with when somebody is cheating me personally, more times after, again. And then to have compassion. So I was wondering, I get first angry to the other person when somebody cheats me, cheating me. But I was wondering how you.
What do you do?
You are developed a lot. Do you never get angry again? And first
Oh, I wish. No, I get angry. Yeah. I think if we know people are cheating us, again, we can have compassion because they're creating negative karma. And so we can let them know that we know that they're not being forthright with us. Yeah. And you can sit down with the accounting books, or you can, whatever it is you need to go through, and you ask for the account, and when it becomes evident that they aren't doing things properly, then you say, look, this is not being done properly. Sometimes you might have to fire them, but you can do all of this without being angry. Yeah. That's the thing, because sometimes we think that anger is the only motivation to have when we deal with people who are doing harmful actions. As if, we have to be angry, otherwise they're just going to walk all over us. And the Buddhist position on that is, no, you can have a motivation of compassion and use that to stop harm. We don't have to be angry.
Mostly, first my anger is there, and secondary, I can do a step back and.
Right. This is what's called practicing the Dharma. You notice you have a rotten motivation, you step back, you take one of the thought training or Lamrim meditations, you do it, calm your mind, and then you act in the situation. Yeah. Yeah, we're all learning. We're all learning.
this morning you talked about letting go of possessions and in regard to attachment. And I was wondering if you could tell something about letting go of persons or people that choose to go their own way or whatever, even if you don't want it, and the pain and the suffering it causes.
Oh, yeah. When we're very attached to people, it's very painful, isn't it? Yeah. When we can't be near them or when they make a big change in the relationship. If you're attached to your children when they grow up, it's difficult. If you're attached to your spouse and you have to be separated by distance or the marriage isn't working out, that becomes difficult. Also with friendships. So attachment to people. I think one way to deal with it is really by analyzing the nature of attachment and seeing how attachment is based on exaggeration of someone's good qualities or projecting good qualities onto someone that they don't actually have and therefore being attached. One of the big ways that we become attached to somebody is just by calling them my friend, my spouse, my mother, my father, my pet dog. Yeah, just the word my completely changes our relationship with a person. Okay, example, your neighbor's kid is 7 years old and just flunked their spelling test. It's not a big deal. A 7-year-old doesn't know how to spell cat and dog, and, that's not a big deal. You don't get upset your neighbor's kid flunked their spelling test. Your kid, 7 years old, flunks their spelling test. Oh my God, he's not going to get into a good university. He's not going to have a good career. His whole life is going to be completely in turmoil because he's a bad student and he's stupid and, we got to do something. Yeah? That's just the two different reactions between your kid and the other kid who do exactly the same thing. Why is it? It's because we have put the word my with one child and we don't put it with the other child. Yeah. Why is it a big deal if our kid can't spell cat and dog? Yeah, it's not a big deal if the neighbor's kid can't do it. Why is it a big deal if our kid can't do it? They're only 7 years old. They'll learn how to spell cat and dog. Anyway, people use spell check now. So it'll be okay. We don't need, as a parent, to get bent out of shape. Yeah, we don't need to have the perfect child who is an image of everything that we weren't able to be. Mm-hmm. I'm frank, okay? I mean, it's true. Sometimes you want your child to have everything you didn't have, to be everything you weren't able to be. Yeah. Because you think that will make the child happy. Yeah. But maybe that's not what's going to make the child happy. And maybe that's not what your child's talent is going to be. Yeah? So you have to relax sometime and give the children some space to find their own path. You have to guide them. But, and when they're little, of course, you can control everything they do because you can just pick them up. Well, you can't control everything because they cry whenever they want to, whether we want them to cry or not. And they poop whenever they want to. Yeah, whether we want them to do that or not. Okay, so, there's a real big degree of acceptance that needs to be there for parents. Yeah, And you can understand as a parent, you want the best for your child. And you've spent years protecting this child from danger. And then they get older and they're going to go do things that you're going, oh, what in the world? This is so dangerous. How can they go off and do this? And you want to prevent them from doing it. But they're 20 and you can't throw a lasso and draw them back. Yeah, they're adults. So it's, I'm talking here because I think this is often a thing that's hard for parents, is to respect what their children want to become. Yeah. So, if you need some sympathy, you can think about my parents. Yeah, my parents did not raise me to be a Buddhist nun. Okay? Yeah, I was supposed to be a doctor, marry a doctor or a lawyer, have 2 or 3 children, go to fashion shows with my mother, go to the beauty shop with my mother, love to go shopping with my mother, love to go on cruises with both my parents, learn to play tennis like my father, learn to dive off a high dive like my dad. Yeah, this is what they wanted from a daughter, and look what they got. Yeah. I can't play tennis. I don't want to dive off a high dive. I hate shopping. Absolutely hate it. Look at my hair. Look at my clothes. What were my parents going to do? Yeah, they got me. And meanwhile, all their friends' kids were, being professionals and so on, except the ones who got into drugs. But many of those were professionals and got into drugs. In fact, that was probably most of them. Okay, but it's hard being a parent, and you have to let go. Okay, one practice, because you asked how to let go of this attachment. So besides analyzing attachment and seeing how our mind exaggerates and projects and seeing how attachment evolves, that's one way to do it. Another way with people that I found very effective is when you offer the mandala, you put the people you're attached to in the mandala and you offer them to the Buddha. And if you think about it, wouldn't it be better for the people you're attached to be under the Buddha's guidance rather than to be under your possessive attachment? Yeah? So it's a nice practice. You offer the people you're attached to the Buddha. And you just say, Buddha, now you guide them, you take care of them. I wish them well. Yeah? And of course you keep speaking to them and everything. But it helps to not be so attached. Yeah, try it. It takes some work, but really, you're giving the person to the Buddha. The Buddha certainly will take good care of them. Another thing while she's going there to remember is, the Buddha often spoke about how whatever comes together must also separate. Yeah? So in relationships, that's very true. We come together and we separate. And sometimes we separate before we die, but always we have to separate at the time of death. And there's no way around it. Yeah. So if we remember that at the beginning, that what comes together must separate, then that helps us not to get so attached, not to cling so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question, I'm quite new to Buddhism, so it's probably a beginner's question, but it relates to karma and reincarnation and family.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a reason you become part of a certain family, where you get certain relationships?
Yeah. Well, we're reborn due to our karma, our previous actions. Yeah. And it's not like we sit up on some cloud and say, okay, where am I going to be reborn? Mother, applications for mother apply here, applications for father here. No, we don't sit and choose our parents and our family, unless we are an Arya Bodhisattva. Those people have the ability to choose their, where they're going to be born. The rest of us don't. And also, it's not like, sometimes you hear people say, I was born into that family, it was a lesson. I had to learn a lesson, so I was born into this situation. Actually, speaking like that implies that there's somebody who's a lesson planner. Yeah? Somebody who's making up lessons for us all to learn something from. And Buddhism does not talk about this kind of thing. From a Buddhist perspective, there is no God or divine being who is making people born in certain places to learn lessons, or making them born in certain places just to see what happens. But it's by the force of our previous actions. And then, of course, in any situation, there's always the opportunity to learn something. But whether we learn is up to us. Yeah, there's no pre-planned lessons. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this will be the last question.
There was a little part about tidiness and cleaning up.
Uh-huh.
And I come from the Theravada tradition where cleaning up is very important as well.
Yes.
But I don't really know why.
Why is cleaning so important? Because when purification is a very important part of all the Buddhist traditions, we've committed negativities, there's implants, seeds implanted on our mind. We need to purify and make amends for our negative deeds. Okay? So external cleaning is like an external manifestation of what we're trying to do internally. Yeah? So you can think like that when you're cleaning. I need to clean my mind in the same way that I clean the environment. Also, if you sit down to meditate in a place that is dirty and messy and congested with all sorts of stuff, when you see clutter, your mind becomes clutter. Yeah, if you live in a very, or meditate in a very clean, clear place, it's much easier to calm your mind. So cleanliness is actually important in all the traditions. Yeah. And it's important even if you're not a Buddhist. Yeah. Okay, so let's sit quietly for a couple of minutes. Digestion meditation.